Our next guest's imaginative and iconic photographs have become synonymous with babies. She's known the world over for capturing infants in unlikely yet natural poses. She began her career quite by accident. She chose children and babies as subjects simply because she loved them. She's currently lending her name and talents to the March of Dimes with the goal of raising awareness about World Prematurity Day. She and the organization hope to reduce the rate of premature births by 15%. Take a look.
Hello, I'm Geddes. Every 2 seconds, somewhere in the world, a baby is born too soon. Did you know that premature birth is the leading cause of newborn deaths, not just in the US, but around the world? It's not too late to make a difference. The March of Dimes is working to prevent premature birth and new lives can be saved. Give every newborn the chance to be born healthy. Join with me and the March of Dimes. Take the first step. Visit marchofdimes.org.
And Geddes' work has been published in 83 countries, and she sold 18 million books and 13 million calendars. Her own philanthropic trust has donated nearly $6 million around the world to raise awareness about the vulnerability of children. She's here to tell us about her role as a March of Dimes ambassador and her life behind the lens. Welcome to Full Frame.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You look so comfortable with that baby. I mean, you've been around so many of them, but talk to us about...
Hundreds and hundreds, yes. Maybe thousands.
They all know you and love you, as do we.
Thank you.
Talk to me about March of Dimes. You could be working on any project out there. Why this one?
Oh, March of Dimes. Look, when they approached me to represent them and create an image, particularly for World Prematurity Day, how could I say no? I mean, I've worked in 4 NICU units over my career, and premature babies are the most special little people, and the work that the March of Dimes does in terms of research, in terms of finding out why these babies are born too soon, is so important. You know, premature birth is the biggest cause of newborn deaths in the US, and I don't think a lot of people realise that.
You have 2 girls of your own. I'm sure when you go into these units, you think, wow, I'm so lucky.
Oh, so lucky. You know, the first premature baby that I photographed was in Auckland, in New Zealand, in 1993. And my girls were small then, but this little baby, it was 2.2 pound Manisha. And last month she turned 21. So it just goes to show how long I've been doing this. But it's really nice to have stayed in touch with her over the years, and when the relatively inexperienced Geddes, new in her career, took that photograph way back in 1993, I really had no idea of its impact around the world. And over the ensuing years, I've had so many people approach me and say, can I just tell you, we had a premature baby, and that image of Manisha was either on our fridge door, on the wall behind the humidity crib, somewhere special that I could just connect with every day, and helped us believe that our little one was going to make it, that they did actually have a chance. And so these premature babies, they're just so incredible, and it's such an amazing opportunity to be able to go into a NICU unit and actually photograph.
That image, I think, is seared into everyone's mind.
Yeah.
But this one of Alfred, let's take a look at that one.
Yep.
And I'd like you to just talk to us about your inspiration for it. And given the fact that you had that history, what type of impact do you think this image is going to have? Well,
you know, this image of Alfred, who was born 8 weeks too soon, he weighed 2 pounds 6 ounces, and so he was a tiny little guy for 8 weeks too soon. And I photographed him in Sydney, Australia. And, you know, for my whole career, I've always been fascinated with the anatomical sketches of Leonardo da Vinci, and, you know, what went into those sketches 400 years ago in his inquiring mind in terms of medical research and so on. And so what I wanted to do was link the work that March of Dimes are doing in terms of their research into why babies are born too soon, and make people think, well, in 400 years' time, again, where will we be? And hopefully far down the track in terms of solving this problem. But little Alfred, who lives in Sydney, Australia, his mother wrote me an email a couple of days ago, and because I told her Alfred's image is, you know, in Times Square, And she's like, oh my goodness, she said, he's sitting next to me in his high chair, chewing on my iPhone cover, having no concept of the fact that he's making such a difference to families around the world. And I thought that was really, really touching.
One of the things that's striking about those images, and I'm sure you have to noodle this quite a bit, is you have to illustrate the simplicity, the beauty, the wonder of a baby, but you also have to indicate how small it is. I mean, as we were indicating.
Yes.
So how much thinking goes into that, and how do you come up with your ideas?
Well, you have to, obviously proportional, the proportion of the baby with the big hands in the 1993 image really got across, you know, exactly how tiny these babies are. And it can be quite shocking if you haven't been into a NICU unit and actually seen how small they are. But I didn't want to go there again with the image of Alfred, and so that's why we put him in sort of a big hand. So he does look tiny and vulnerable, and yet they're still quite tough, these little babies. But to go, as a photographer, to go into one of these NICU units, every time I come out, I say to my husband, that's the last time I just can't, it's just too emotional. Because, you know, when I work normally in a studio, I work, if I want one newborn in an image, I will have 3 newborn babies at the studio, right? When you go into a NICU unit, there's just Alfred, and there's a lot of expectation in the room, and I've only got one baby to work with, and he can't be out of the humidity crib for too long, even though he was quite healthy at the time. So you need to actually know exactly what you're doing, you know, so you can't fiddle around with them too much. And you really, I think it's 30 years of experience that goes into being able to create an image like that in a 5-minute time period.
What's the desire when you take an image like that? I mean, you know, going back in time, the impact that you've had, but moving forward, what do you hope to, because, you know, they say a picture's worth 1,000 words. I mean, what's the overarching message? What
I want for this image of Alfred, and for the March of Dimes, because obviously he's representing the March of Dimes, and Alfred is also representing all of these preemie babies who are born every year. And, you know, there's 15 million premature babies born around the world every year, and 1 million of them don't survive. There's 450,000 babies born in the US too soon. And so Alfred's got a big weight on his tiny shoulders, and I think he's telling the story really well, that, you know, these families, and there's premature babies being born today, these families need a sense of hope that their baby will survive, and as of course a lot of these babies don't. And so, you know, the work that the March of Dimes are doing is just incredible, you know, in terms of trying to find out why the babies are born too soon. You know, I'm just so proud to be able to represent them, really.
Well, we're talking a lot about infants, so let's talk about the infancy of your career, because you didn't come to this early on.
No.
You know, you kind of kicked around. You discovered your passion. What was it about it?
Well, I didn't pick up a camera until I was 25. And I grew up in the north of Australia in a very small country town. There were no photography courses. And, you know, I always joke I was the first photographer that I ever met when I first picked up this camera. But I always loved still images. And, you know, I used to subscribe to Life magazine when it was in its heyday. And, you know, I used to just stare at these images of people, and just, I'm fascinated by the fact that there's this moment in time that can be captured forever. And I know there's a lot of moving footage that goes around these days, you know, and there's a lot of imagery that's created, but the importance of, you know, it's like the Alfred image, the importance of one single image to really catch someone's heart and someone's emotions is what I've always tried to do during my career. I did 10 years of portraiture when I first started out, you know, and it taught me, you know, how to relate to children of different ages and the ages to avoid as I got older. But, you know, I did learn, I did my 10,000 hours, you know. I did learn the difference of relating to a newborn as opposed to a 6-month-old, as opposed to a 12-month-old and a 2-year-old, and so on. And so I think, you know, with my career in my later years, with all of my books and the work that philanthropic work that I've been able to do with my husband as well, has been a reward for all of those years. You know, I don't think anyone ever starts their career knowing where it's going to end up. Anyone who becomes successful never really thought that would be the case in the first place.
Speaking of which, I've taken an awful lot of pictures of my kids, but I never once thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if I dressed them up as a sunflower or a carrot? I mean, were you just walking through the produce aisle one day and said, what if I did this with a kid? I mean, the concepts, I mean, everybody who looks at those pictures, they bust up laughing. The kids are so cute. Yeah. It's such a great idea. How did you go there?
The images that you're probably talking about were the ones from my very first coffee table book, Down in the Garden, which was phenomenally successful. And when I was shooting Down in the Garden, my girls were small and they were reading fairy tales and, you know, all these wonderful children's books. And that was the headspace I was in at the time. So the whole concept for Down in the Garden and all the babies in the flower hats and the flower pots and all of that sort of came from there. Even today, people come up to me and say, oh, I just loved that book. And, you know, it's funny for me to think now that all of those little babies possibly have babies of their own, because they're certainly all in their 20s now. We're coming up for the 20th anniversary of Down in the Garden.
You got to go find them and take pictures of them as adults.
Well, I've often thought about that, yes, that would be an amazing project. And I've kept in touch with a lot of them over the years, and so, yeah, something like that. But maybe when I'm a little bit older. You know? Is
there anything or anyone that you haven't photographed that you're just itching to get out there and take a...
No, look, you know, the older I get, I've photographed some really beautiful babies, obviously, and I've done some portraiture, private portraiture for some pretty incredible people. And, you know, what an amazing career I've had, being able to go into palaces and all sorts of different places. And just, you know, one of the unique things about babies that I love is that it doesn't matter what circumstances they're born into. At that period in their lives, you know, between newborn and 2 or 3, they're all the same. You know, they all have the same potential. They are just great little human beings. You know, that's what I love about babies. You know, they're completely guileless, and they're just good people. You know, they are everything that a baby represents to me is the fact that they are so important to us as human beings, and they take families forward. They create new moms and dads, and they speak for our eternal chance at new beginnings, and that's what my work speaks to, and hopefully that's why so many people love what I do.
Beginnings always lead to ends, and unfortunately we run out of time, but thank you so much. It was great talking to you.
Nice to be here.
Coming up next, innovative new approaches to minimizing the impact of preterm births and infant mortality.